Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of the B&H Virtual Event Space. Happy to welcome back Maria Pérez-Cejuela López. Maria, welcome back. How you doing today?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
Always a pleasure to have you. We're super excited. I believe we're in our third installment. Am I right? Third
I think so.
Here?
Yes. Time passes, right?
Time flies. I'm pretty sure I'm still in January right now. So we're not, spoiler alert, we're in May. But this is
way too hot for January, at least here.
It's getting there. It's starting to get nice. The sun's coming out. The allergies, as you can tell, are just in full bloom, which is the great news. But the good news for everybody at home who's tuning in, you don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to step outside and get all those allergies. You can stay inside and hear Maria take us through workflow, catalogs, and file management. So we'll make sure to go ahead and drop parts 1 and 2 if you've missed them or just want to catch up on them into the chats. If you're joining us here on Zoom and you have any questions, you can use the Q&A tab. And if you're joining us on Vimeo or Facebook, you can use the comment section. And please, by all means, any questions you have about the Capture One software, anything that you want to get answered, please feel free to shoot them over so we can get them to Maria. But otherwise, without further ado, I'm going to step out of the way and give it over to you, Maria. Thanks to you and Capture One for sponsoring the event. See you back in a little bit.
See you later. Thanks, Scott, for the introduction. So for those of you who haven't followed the previous session, my name is Maria López for short. And I'm an account manager and a trainer at Capture One. So as Scott said, this is our third session at the event space. I'm very happy and excited to be here as always. If you haven't checked out the previous sessions, I recommend you to do so. The first one was all about getting started with Capture One. So it was a very basic level session, just for those of you who never used Capture One in the past. Then we did a session on tethering and sessions, like the Capture One sessions. And yeah, that's also there. And today we're going to be talking catalogs and file management. It's a very dense topic, kind of, and it's a session very much packed with information. So I'm just going to go right into it. I'm going to share my screen. This time I'm going to start with a little presentation to use some visual aid because before jumping into Capture One, I will be explaining some base concepts that I believe will help you to understand how file management works in Capture One or pretty much many digital asset management softwares for photos. And yeah, some basic characteristics of the software that will help you to understand like the concept of what we're trying to do here. And I believe it will help you moving forward. So, oopsie, there you go. So we have around 45 minutes for this session and I will leave some time in the end for questions and answers. So please don't hold back on those. Feel free to post them either in the chat, the Q&A tab on Zoom or on Facebook Live. Yeah, there will be a recording of the webinar so you can rewatch it and ask all of your questions. Right, so this is what I wanted to cover today. It is a lot, as I said, so please bear with me. It's a session that you demand us a lot about file management, cataloging, all this kind of thing. It's not a very easy topic to cover because it's very diverse, the way in which you can organize your photo archive or a catalog in general. And there is no absolutes. So the thing is that everyone is different. And because of that, there is no rule of thumb for organizing catalog. Well, there is a couple of general recommendations, but nothing more than that. Unfortunately, it's something that everyone needs to kind of figure out on their own according to what makes sense for them. But I'm going to give you some general ideas so you can make an informed decision on that and find out what works for you. So we're going to cover the difference between sessions and catalogs. Today, we will be focusing specifically on the catalogs. If you have any issues with the sessions, I recommend you watch the previous webinar that Scott already put on the chat, very handy. So then we were going to talk about different ways to manage your assets in catalogs, keyword and metadata input. And then I'm going to be showing you a couple of very nice tricks that many people don't know that are possible to do in Capture One. One of them is importing a Lightroom catalog. This is thought for all of those of you Lightroom users out there who have been working in Lightroom for a while and you decided you want to try Capture One or you're maybe on the trial mode now. So there is the possibility to import the Lightroom catalog to kind of not start from the scratch. So you can have already a catalog with your files and more on that later. There's also a possibility to archive your sessions in a catalog to take advantage of both worlds. And I'm going to show you how to do that as well, which is something that I actually do. And then very important, last but not least, backups. Do backup your files. And I'm going to show you what I do for that. Right, so let's go into the content already. So we covered in the last session, sessions, as I said, it's kind of redundant, but yeah, sorry about that. So we covered the sessions, which are specifically meant for tethering. I mean, you can use them for importing as well, but they were kind of born for tethering with your camera. So kind of shooting tether to your computer, files coming in some different folders. As I said, you can rewatch the previous session on that. And this kind of way to manage files is basically thought for photographers who worked in different projects, as in a project-based workflow, so to say, or in a commercial workflow, like fashion photographers, portrait, advertising. And every session works as a standalone unity, so to say. So the reason behind that is that these people who work in this kind of projects, they need to keep projects separately because sometimes they're working on set with clients and it's not ideal that your clients can see other unrelated projects. That's one of the reasons. Another reason is that it's a collaborative workflow where different people might be intervening in the files. And because of having this folder structure, it's very easy to back up and to share with other people. And this is important. A session is a file management model where the RAWs, the original RAW files, and the adjustments that you are working in Capture One are stored together within this folder structure. So it's like self-contained. So that's on the sessions. As opposed to that, we have the catalogs. The main difference between the catalogs and the sessions, where there is many different use cases for this, but I'd say that the main difference is that in the catalogs, it's not like that. We have the RAWs stored in one way and the adjustments stored in another place, right? So the RAWs would be stored pretty much wherever you want, in your local hard drive, in an external hard drive, anywhere. And then the adjustments are stored within the catalog, but the RAWs are not in the catalog. I'll show you some photos that will help you to understand this. So if sessions are for commercial photographers, who are catalogs for? So catalogs, they work pretty much very similarly as to how they do in Adobe Lightroom. It's just something we implemented along the way for Lightroom users to be better able to understand and work with files in Capture One. They're meant to store large projects. And typically it's projects that are extended on time, kind of weddings, travels, press, like any kind of photographer who is typically shooting thousands of files in one session. It's pretty much a user case for a catalog. It works as a centralized photo archive as opposed to the session where you create one session for each project. What we recommend in catalogs is that you use it as your unity to manage your whole photo archive. So you can access your catalog, and the idea is to have there all of your files nice and tidy. It's pretty much more for importing than it is for tethering, and it's not based on folders on the computer, it's based on virtual organization. This means that you can organize your files within the catalog inside of Capture One, but it will not affect where the files are actually sitting on your computer. It will not create duplicates. And it's just an organization that is internal from Capture One. It lives in the Capture One metadata, so to say. So this is roughly the differences between sessions and catalogs that I know that some people have tons of questions about. So hopefully this clarifies that a bit. So going back to where the RAWs and the adjustments are stored, this might be like a little boring to hear, but I can assure you that once you understand this little thing, it's going to be so much easier for you to understand what is happening and to get a hold of your files and be on top of everything. So this is a screenshot from how a session looks like, right? So you have this folder structure where you have like session folder, and inside the session folder, there is different subfolders. These are duplicated every time. So every time you create a session, by default, it's going to bring in these folders: capture, output, select, and trash. And from the moment that you import raw files into this session, this little folder is going to be created automatically. It's called Capture One, like all together. And inside of this folder, as you can see, there is the cache and the settings. So everything's going to be stored here. So I recommend you don't mess up with this folder, right? So everything's contained here. And as I said, it's the session folder, this like mother folder contains everything that is related to this project. So easy to transfer and easy to backup. So in case you want to backup a session, you just copy the whole session folder, and there you go, into another volume, and you have a perfect backup. Nothing will be missing. That's how sessions work. Now, how do catalogs work in this case? Yeah, that's my slide. So how do catalogs work in this case? I took this screenshot. This you won't be able to see unless you look for it. I'm not going to tell you how to get here because you're not supposed to, like you can, but you can mess things up. So I will just not show you how to get there because if I tell you, hey guys, don't do this that I'm doing, you will do it anyways because that's how life and psychology works. So I won't tell you how to get here. But I just went inside the catalog package, like under the hood, to show you like inside the catalog, there are like internal folders, but you're not seeing those just at the first sight. You will just see like the catalog file, which is a co-catalog DB extension. And this is what you will be working with. And everything that you will be doing with files will be happening inside this catalog. So the catalog stores the adjustments, the previews, and all the cache that Capture One needs to work with. But the raw files, you decide where to store them. They're not inside the catalog. So you just have to make sure that you know and Capture One knows where your files are, because what Capture One is going to be doing is like, okay, let's say I have a folder called images, and this folder called images contains all of my raw files in this catalog. So when I'm importing files into a catalog, what I'm doing is basically telling Capture One, hey, Capture One, this is a folder called images and my files are here. So whenever you need to process these files, you go into this folder, and this is where the real files are. And Capture One will say, okay, this is where the files are. I will just create previews, and what you see in Capture One are previews, and you work with the previews, and then Capture One will look for the route of the file whenever you are processing these files. But otherwise, you're working with previews, or like smart previews, or as they are called in Lightroom. And you can even work offline and all kinds of things like that. But yeah, you just gotta make sure that Capture One knows where the files are. So for example, if you rename a folder, or if you move around some raw files, these files will appear as offline, which is something that we can fix, but we definitely want to try to avoid. So keep that in mind. Another thing to keep in mind with catalogs is that because the adjustments and the raws are stored in different places, we gotta make sure to back up both. I can't stress enough how important it is to back up because disasters do happen and weird things happen, and you want to make sure that you're covered by then. So I'm going to show you how to probably do backups in this session. So now talking specifically about the catalogs, how do we organize our files within a catalog? Today, I'm going to show you 3 different ways to do that. So we can use collections, we can use keywords, or you can just use Capture One as a folder browser, so to say. So you just kind of go around the folders, and there you see where your things are, and you can just synchronize the folders in your computer. You can use one of these, you can use a combination of these. The most important thing is that there is no right or wrong to this, as I said, which makes it complicated, but also makes it important for you to understand what you're actually doing. So everyone is different. Everyone has a different logic. There's no right or wrong. Just find a way that suits your logic and stick to it. That's very important, okay? You don't want to have different ways to manage or organize your files. You don't want to be switching from one to another every month, because in the future, you might need to find a specific file. And if you have been switching the way you organize your files, it's going to be hard for you to find that you need, because you don't really know when that happened or what system were you following back then. So as generic statements, this will be like my 3 main recommendations. So think to the future, think like, okay, what if I needed to find this file for my client 5 years from now for whatever reason? Would I be able to find it? How will I make sure that my 5 years ahead me will be able to find this file? And just ask yourself this question, find a way that makes sense for you, and follow that system. That's like the most important, in my opinion. So this is like the theoretical background. Let's just go into Capture One now and see how we want to do things. Okay, so here I have a demo catalog. It's kind of embarrassing because these are very old photos, but it's just like a catalog that I set up for my session, so it's like handy. But then we'll be switching to another one. But just let's work here for now. So this is the Capture One interface by default. If you watch the first session, you know that you can change elements around, but for today, we're going to be sticking to the default so everyone sees the same thing. And what we're going to be focusing on today is the library and maybe the metadata tool tab, which is the little I here, but mainly the library. So let's just take a look at this catalog. If this was a session here, we would see the session folders, but it's a catalog. What we see instead, it's catalog collections. So there is some collections in the catalog. Collections, for you to understand, is virtual organization units. So it's an organization unit that is happening, as I said, only within Capture One. So moving this image or the other image from one collection to another will not affect the original raw files. It will not move them in your computer. It will not duplicate them. It just exists in Capture One, okay? It's like a Capture One internal language. So we have all of these collections. I'm going to hide these for now and also these. So let's just take it one at a time. The catalog collections are created automatically from the moment that you create a catalog. So these collections are all images, recent imports, recent captures, and a trash. So all images, well, it's pretty much self-explanatory. It's all images in the catalog. And here you can kind of like apply your filters or like play around with everything in this catalog. But we typically don't want to just stick with the all images collection. We want to be able to classify your files and to properly archive them. The whole purpose, as I said before, is to make sure that you know where things are, you know where your photos are, and you are able to find them whenever you want to. So how to do that? As I say, 3 different ways. I'm going to start just right underneath with the user collections. The reason why I decided to show you this catalog first is because this is the first thing that I started doing. So back then in this 2017 glorious year, I was just like, it was like my first year using Capture One kind of. So I really didn't know what to do. So I was kind of just dumping my raw files in a random folder. And yeah, and I will just organize everything inside the catalog. I was not using sessions back then. Now I'm more of a session user, as I will tell you in a second with the second catalog I'll be showing. But back then I was just using catalogs because I came from Lightroom and it's what I knew and it's kind of what made sense in this moment. So the first thing I started to do is creating these user collections, right? So user collections, as you can see here, there is a kind of hierarchy where we have like a top here, and then we have this little folder icon and then this kind of squares. So if I go here to this plus, this is where you can create your different user collections. If I hit on this plus, this submenu is going to pop up and it's going to be giving me different options like album, smart album, project, and group. And if you're new to Capture One, I can get that this is kind of not so intuitive, like, okay, Maria, what the heck is a group or what the heck is a project or what is the difference between those actually? So it's just a matter of hierarchy. So if you put it from top to bottom, the most powerful way of organization will be the project. So the project can contain groups and the group contains album and a smart albums, both things, okay? So this is how I did it kind of. So for example, this is in Spanish, but yeah, you might be able to understand. So I created like a project for traveling, for travel photos, like I was going around this year a lot. So I went to all of these different places and I just say, okay, I'm going to create a project for travel photography. And all of my travel photos are going to be contained within this project. And then within this project, I created some groups. Like for example, I was having a lot of bike trips that year. Like I was just going around with my bike. So I just created different albums for the different trips. So for example, this is a specific trip. Okay, so all of the photos from this trip I put inside an album. And as I said, it's just internal organization. Don't forget about that. Files are not duplicated and not going anywhere. But inside Capture One, they live inside that album instead of just living in the random all images collection. So this is what I started doing. So all of these different albums that are kind of related by a topic, I put inside a group, and the group I put inside a project. And the project contains all of the groups and all of the images, as you can see. So if you notice, if I click on the group, I will not be able to see any previews, but if I click on the project, that's going to show me everything that is contained within the project, right? So another interesting thing is like here underneath you have the filters. The filters I also use a lot. What I use mainly is stars and color tags because they seem intuitive to me, and they seem intuitive to me back then, kind of. So for example, all the green tags here, the green tags means a photo has been processed, photo has been edited and processed, and so it's kind of done. Oh my God, I would look at these photos today and it's like, okay, I would edit them in a completely different way, but we're not doing anything today. That's for the next session, guys. Excuse me. So the green tag filter will only show me, excuse me. I'm going to be doing a lot of talking today, so bear with me. So the green filter for the green color tags here will be showing me only the green tags within this project, which I find very useful. So for example, in this project, I have 399 green tags. So I said, well, I just tagged green, whatever I had edited. So just right-clicking, color tagging, and then they will show up in the filters. As opposed to the old images collection where I have 763 green tags, right? So this is the difference. So it kind of made sense for me to do that and to do it like that. But I eventually moved on from this because for me, it's as I started to learn more about Capture One, it made more sense for me to work with the folders, with the session folders. So I switched to a folder-based organization then. But this is what I started to do first, and it was kind of okay. It was not great, but it was kind of okay, and it served me for a while. And I know that some people just like dump their files there and then they can do the organization within the catalog. That's totally fine. As I said, whatever works for you, it's going to be okay. And then, you can combine these user collections with the filters and just play around with the color tags and the rating. I can see, for example, here I use different color tags that I don't use now. Like, for example, I don't use blue or purple anymore. I just kind of use red, yellow, and green, like a street light. So red is like, okay, this is a selected, but it has not been edited yet. Yellow is kind of in the process, or maybe that photo needs to go to Photoshop for some reason. And green is like, okay, ready to go. So that's what I'm using now. I don't want to overcomplicate things because I really hate the culling part and the organization part. And I just prefer to have fun with editing. So I don't spend a lot of time in this, just whatever works. And that's it. I don't struggle a lot with that. So that would be the first way to do this. So let's say, for example, I wanted to bring into, now let's go with this one, for example, again. Let's say, how do you move a photo into a different album? So let's say, for example, okay, this is not Berlin, this is Firenze. So I'm just going to move a photo to another album. So you just kind of select the photos that you want to move. You can do more than one at a time, of course, and then you just drag them to the album and they are there. And they are now into different albums, but the file is not duplicated. Let me know if this makes sense for you guys, or I'm going too fast. Let me know if you have any questions. I can see a question in the chat that I'm going to address now, actually, because it's a very short answer. So someone asking about shooting tether with Capture One and Olympus cameras. Unfortunately, Olympus cameras don't support tethering with Capture One, or the other way around. Capture One doesn't support tethering with Olympus cameras. So that's for now. Too bad. I hope that changes because it's actually very nice cameras. Some of the Olympus cameras are very great. So this is like the first way to organize. I can see another question related to the topic, so I'm going to address it now. So one could also have groups as top level and multiple projects in a group. Correct. It's just an organization that has no other ramification. Yes, that's correct. So actually, projects and groups are technically the same level in the hierarchy. But in my mind, it just kind of makes sense to put the projects on top of the groups because of this green tag thing. So how to explain? The filters will work in a project. And if you apply a filter in a project, it will just show you the files that are matching these filters within this project, but not in the whole catalog, which is something that I find very useful as a top level organization. But yes, technically you could also have groups and have projects contained within the groups. That makes sense too, actually. So yes, I said different logics, different ways of organizing things. So that works. Right, so this would be way number one. Let's move on to way number two, which is keywords. Now, keywords are very popular. I know tons of people and tons of successful photographers, like especially photographers that work a lot with travel, or they cover events or press, photojournalists, or they cover weddings. And many kind of photographers that have to deal with a lot of files, they use keywords. What happens is like, it did not work for me ever. Like I tried, and I'm going to show you the testimony that I tried. So keywords, as it looks like right now in the default interface, they are not in the library, which might not make a lot of sense for some people. They are actually here on this other tool tab called metadata. So let's just go in here. In the metadata tool tab, you have, well, all the camera metadata, and then you also have keywords and the keyword library in the catalog. The proof that I tried and I failed is that I created this whole keyword structure for this catalog, and I never used it. Like here, for example, this is photos from Berlin, so it should be, there should be a Berlin keyword here at least, or like travel, or like Germany, whatever, and it's not here. I tried and I failed. It didn't work for me, but I'm going to show you how to do that in Capture One, if that's the kind of organization that you want to choose. It didn't work for me. It doesn't mean it's wrong or anything. It's just like, you need to be very consistent when you're working with keywords. And as I said, the file managing part, it's not super interesting for me. So I never managed to be consistent enough. But if you do use keywords and are consistent, and you feed the catalog with those keywords, it can actually be a super powerful way to manage images. So let's say, for example, because this is inside the Berlin album, if you can remember, I'm just going to select all the photos, Command A, and yeah, I'm just going to tag them with the keywords, the right keywords. So this is in Spanish, but you get the idea, and Berlin is like international name. So yeah. And now all of these photos are tagged with the right keywords. Just another side note, if you want to move these tools away from this tab and put them in the library, you can actually do that, and you can float them around and everything that makes sense for you, because Capture One is like super flexible with the interface part of things. So you can see that you can actually do a lot of improving around, and maybe you can even like put it right here underneath your collections if that's what makes sense for you. So everything's customizable, remember. So now I'm going to put the keywords up, so it will show me the keywords that are in this photo that I selected and not in the keyword library. The keyword library will always show you all the keywords that are contained within this catalog. And when you select the photo, you will see the keywords here. Now, how you actually use this? Like, you can also even like create any, let's just put in some more keywords here. Like, let's say, for example, I don't know, river, and let's say, for example, Berlin Wall, which was right behind me when I took this photo. Well, Berlin Wall, you get the idea. So this is how you input the keywords. And the moment you put a keyword into the photo, this is going to be classified in our keyword library, including our Berlin Wall. So that's how you do it. That's how it works. And the whole idea is to create this kind of tree of keywords. And the moment that you import new files, you will be able to see like, okay, so for example, if I'm going to Italy again, I will just input these keywords right from the moment I import the files. Just like say, okay, this is Italy, or this is like the mountain, or this is a landscape, and just put the keywords as soon as you import the files. And then let's just go back to the all images collection. And the whole idea behind this is that then you can add any filter. So for example, let's say I want to filter all the images that are including the keyword Berlin. So there you go. That's another way to do it. Instead of just creating the collection, dragging your photos inside, this is another way to do it. It doesn't make a lot of sense here because, as I said, I was never consistent with this and I don't have many keywords applied, but you can imagine how this goes when you have a big catalog, and the more files you put in, the more keywords that will start showing in your catalog and the more tags you can do. I imagine that this is very useful for the people who actually succeed on doing it to the long term, as I was talking before. So let's say, for example, I want to find 10 years from now a photo from Berlin because I want to, I don't know, print an album or whatever. And it's nice to just go here and filter by Berlin, and those are all of my photos from Berlin. So that's a second way to do it. There's another question that I'm going to address now. If I have an image in 2 different albums, I'm working on the image within one of the albums and create a new variant. Will the new variant appear in both albums? No, I don't think it does. Yeah, I don't know, actually. Let's try it. I have no idea. So let's just go again with this example, and I'm just going to create, where am I? Yeah, I'm going to create another album, and let's see what happens with that. It's actually a good question, and we all always learn things. So this one, for example, I'm going to put in this demo album, and I'm going to clone the variant, and let's see what it actually does. It also creates a new variant in all the albums where this photo is stored. So thanks for the question. I also learned something today. So this will be like the second way to do things. I'm going to get rid of these tools here to go back to defaults. And this is how it would be again by default. So we covered 2 ways, collections and keywords. Let's just go on to another catalog, a more recent one, and let's see another way of doing this. So I'm just going to switch here to my session archive catalog. This is about backing up. This is important, but I will cover it later. So for now, I will just choose not now. Okay, this is a different catalog. As you can see, I moved away from the user collections. You can see some of these here, but this is because I imported sessions into this catalog. I'll get to that in a moment. So the third way of doing that, let's just forget about these user collections for a moment. The third way of doing this is just to actually use your folders in your computer. So let's say that instead of just dumping your files randomly on a folder called photos, you actually put some thought into what folders you are dumping your files into. So let's just say that, okay, this is like France project. So let's just say that you have folder named France, and you create that folder in your computer, and then you put in there your raw files. So you already did some kind of organization, right? You created a folder, you put your files in there. So then why replicate the same structure in user collections, or why using keywords when you can just utilize the same folder? So that's something that you can also do. So underneath the user collections, we also have folders, and by default, they will appear empty. But if you just click here, you can just select any folder in your computer where you want to synchronize your file. So you would just choose any folder, you click on add, and then that will just import every file in this folder, will just be coming right into Capture One. It will generate the previews. Well, this can take longer or shorter time depending on how many images are contained within this album. So you might want to keep that into account, because if you're synchronizing a folder with, let's say, 10,000 photos, it can take a while. And it might not be ideal if that's your case, if you have folders and projects with 10,000 photos, because it will take longer to synchronize everything. So if we start doing this, what we're going to see eventually is like this tree that is emulating the roots in your computer. So Archive A is my main hard drive for work. I will get there also. And then I have these folders. Well, 2021 shouldn't be ongoing anymore, but I'm kind of behind on editing, so it's still kind of ongoing, right? So I have the 2021 folder, and of course I showed more, but it's just like not here because haven't been keeping up. Life happens. But then we have all of these folders that are contained here, and this structure is being generated, and Capture One is just utilizing anything that is within these folders. It would just synchronize the files, and it's just like browsing in your computer, and it just creates this whole thing. So for example, in here, photos are contained in the Capture folder, and everything in the Capture folder will be showing in Capture One. So if you want to synchronize the folder again, you just have to right click on the folder and synchronize. And then it will give you different options. Let's say that I added some new images after that, or I created a subfolder, anything like that, you're able to synchronize anytime you want. So that's another way of bringing your files into the catalog while keeping an organization. I wouldn't recommend browsing folders and doing the user collections in the same time, because it can kind of get confusing. Because when we are doing folders we are actually working with the actual folder. So if I moved one file from this folder to another folder, that will happen also in the computer, right? This wouldn't be virtual organization anymore. It's not good or bad per se, just you need to understand the implications of what you're doing, which is what I'm trying to explain you as clearly as possible, despite it's kind of a bit abstract, but I hope I'm doing a good job at that. Of course, these folders are also compatible with filters. So if I just wanted to take this photo and put a green tag to it, then that's going to be showing also, that's going to be reflecting in your filters. So if I filter on green tags, that's going to be working only within the folder. So it kind of works like a project does. So it's just contained within the folder that you're working with at a certain point. Another interesting thing about filters, which I'm using a lot, and this you can utilize, I mean, I guess everyone is using filters, and this you can use, this little tip, this is actually new in Capture 122. You can customize the filters that you want to see on the interface. So let's say, for example, I don't do keywords, so why should I need to see the keywords filter every time I open a catalog? So you can just click here and use the option show/hide filters. So there you can see what you want to see. And I don't want to see the keywords filter because I don't use keywords, but maybe what I want to see is, I don't know, let's say files that are adjusted. So files that have any kind of adjustments in there. Or maybe if I have different cameras, I want to be able to see the camera serial number. And then if I shot with different cameras, I will be able to see and filter by camera model. There is tons of filters that you can show to hand, like, right, so I don't know, whatever you can think of, whatever IPTC field or metadata field in your camera files, you're going to be able to add it here to this folder. So I just figured I mentioned this because I think it comes in handy. So that's the third way of doing it. As I said, just go into the folders, click on the plus icon that will open your directory, either your Finder if you're working with Mac, or your Windows Explorer if you're working on a PC. Add your folder and it will be synchronized and your files will be added to Capture One. That's the third way of doing it, right? So that's 3 basic ways to do it. And then there is another thing that I'm doing. I try to be consistent with that, but as you can see, I'm not like super successful at that either. Like the thing is that I just moved to work with sessions almost exclusively because the folder structure makes more sense for me. Like I don't have to bother a lot with organizing the files or feeding metadata into these files. It's just like I create different sessions, files are stored in different folders and I name them by year, like by date and project name, as you can see. And there's a reason why I start with the year, then the month, and then the day, because so they will be organized chronologically, kind of, not here, but in the Finder they are. So that's the convention I use. And I think it's also important to stick to conventions for this kind of thing. So if you're going to be doing folders, I recommend you follow this structure or another structure that makes sense for you. Because it just like helps you locate your files and your resources easier. So yeah, I just moved in to work with sessions almost exclusively. And the reason why it looks in like that and there is like a project and there's like groups inside, it's because I brought these sessions into a catalog. So the reason I did that is because this option for file management allows you to kind of use the best from both worlds. So the cleanliness kind of, or like the simplicity of the sessions with the positive thing of the catalog, which is that when you're looking for a file, you don't want to have be going around your computer searching like, okay, was it this folder or was it this other session? I don't remember which session it is anymore. So what I do is import the sessions to the catalog once they're finalized. So let's see how that works. As you can see, some files are already in here that came from sessions. What if you want to bring in your session? So let's just do it. So we would just go to File, and you have an option right here called Import Session. So I'm just going to click on Import Session. That's going to be showing that too. And I'm going to just be importing one session. you have to click on the session file. So the extension co-session DB file is the one that you want to import. So just select your co-session file and click on import. And you see what's happening now. What's happening is that it's taking some time to think what it has to import, and it's going to be bringing these files from the session into my catalog. So what's happening is that the session folder, which was called like this, it became a project within this catalog, and this project contains everything that is inside the session. So raw files, adjustments, color tags, all kinds of metadata that you put into the session, they will be brought right into the catalog, which I think is very useful. So for example, I have these session folders, and the capture folder became an album. And it kind of makes sense because it goes in the same kind of structure. So you have session folders and session albums, which they come by default, but I don't really use. You can use like the all images if you want. But yeah, mainly I've been using with the capture and the output folder. So if I process any files within the session, they will also be brought here. So the only thing that you need to take into account, whether you decide to do this, is that you can synchronize the session with the catalog, but the synchronization doesn't work both ways. It means like, if I go here now and I just like, I don't know, do any modifications or crop any photo or add any other keyword or metadata, it will not be transferred to the session. It will live and exist in the catalog, but the session will not be affected. It will just stay as you brought it in. Okay, so the session synchronized with the catalog, but the catalog does not synchronize with the session. So keep in mind, if you're doing this, use it for archiving sessions that you are done with. You finish a job, you deliver the assets, and you're clear on that session, and you just want to archive it in the case that you ever need to find one of those files again, but you're not doing any further editing. Okay, that's my recommendation at least. So just keep it nice and tidy. What I do is I work in my sessions, I tether in my sessions, I develop the whole project inside the session, and then once I'm done with that, I'm just doing this import session, and the catalog is called session archive, which makes sense for me. So that's another way of doing it, like work with sessions and then bring them into your catalog. I can see another question here. How can one move an entire catalog or related its folders physically to another disk drive with the help of Capture One, making sure that the adjustments stay applied from its origin to database? Thanks for the spelling corrections. Okay, so moving a catalog is fairly simple. So you just basically would move the catalog file. So let's say, for example, where is this catalog here? Okay, this is not the same catalog, but if you wanted to move this entire catalog to somewhere else, you would just literally copy this file into your external hard drive or any other hard drive. And that would copy the catalog, and the root for the files is the same. So as long as you don't move the original raw files, the catalog will work and everything will work, right? So that's one thing. But then I'm actually going to be showing you something different for backing up your catalogs, which I think makes sense. So if you have any other questions so far related to what we talked about, please don't hesitate, put them on the chat. So that is something that I wanted to cover, how to archive sessions in catalogs, because that's a question that I also get a lot. And just two things left for me to show you. So one thing is how to import the Lightroom catalog. So in the case that you are using a Lightroom catalog or there are several catalogs for some time, and you already worked in all this, like all of your collections or keywords or filters or any other kind of organization, why not bringing this organization that you already put effort in into Capture One? Then yes, you can do that as well. So if you want to take advantage of that previous work you did, you can also import your Lightroom catalog into Capture One, and it's very easy. So you just work from within your catalog, and you go again to File on the top, and next to the import session, you can also see the option Import Catalog. And there's different legacy softwares, as well as, you can import a catalog within a catalog, but well, that's for another day. The option that interests us here is importing a Lightroom catalog. So let's just click here. And there's like this little wizard that will guide you through what's gonna happen. So Capture One will never mess up with your previous Lightroom catalog. So it cannot corrupt it. It cannot destroy it or mess it up in any way. So whatever you do, your Lightroom catalog is always going to be safe. And then it tells you what's going to be imported, because unfortunately, not all data can be transferred, but a fair amount of information can be transferred. So basic adjustments: cropping, rotation, white balance, exposure, contrast, and saturation. And then everything that is metadata, except for smart collections. So everything that will be important metadata-wise is keywords, filters, collections. That's all going to be important, not smart collections, but the other will be. Color tags, star rates as well. So basic adjustments plus all these metadata. Now that we understood what's gonna happen, let's just select a catalog. And I have a catalog right here, very handy, a Lightroom catalog. It's just a very silly catalog with a demo file. So yeah, it's not a real one. Yeah, ready for import, just 9 images and 3 collections. Let's see, let's click import and see what happened. So you get a summary when it's finished, still generating the previews from the previous session, but yeah. The catalog has been imported, successfully imported. If there were any incidences with this, you will get a warning, like what happened, like if some files couldn't be imported for whatever reason, that's going to be appearing here on this report. So what happened is that the catalog became a group in this case, and the group contains the different collections that were originally into this catalog. So we have a collection for portraits, we have one for landscapes, still life, and an all images album. So that is what is happening when you import a Lightroom catalog. You can see some data came inside, actually. We have, for example, here we have a 5 stars rating. Here we have 2 stars and possibly some adjustments as well. Yeah, this image is, for example, cropped. This cropping came from Lightroom right into Capture One. I'm not sure if there were any adjustments with any other photos. Yeah, so it's still kind of creating a preview. So this is what was brought in. And this is the before. So some adjustments came from Lightroom into Capture One originally. If we take a look at the adjustments here, you can see exposure, saturation, contrast, all of this was brought from Lightroom directly. So I thought it would be useful to show you that. And it's, I think it was good to show it to you because I get this question a lot. I think there's more questions. I'm going to address those before we go into our last bullet point for today, which is the backup. Very important. Stay with me for that. So how to move folders physically. Okay, again from Raphael. I'm going to be showing you what's happened and how to move and backup folders, right? So just bear with me. Then also from Rick, can I sync the adjustments for a single image across 2 different catalogs? No, that's unfortunately not possible yet because that would require some kind of cloud sync, which is not there yet. But I can tell you that we are starting to work with cloud services at Capture One, so it might be possible to do that in the future, just not for now. So about moving folders. So for example, if you have a folder here and you want to rename it or to move it around, let's say, for example, that I don't want this folder to be here anymore, I just recommend you do that from Capture One, not from the Finder, because then you might have this problem with offline files. And if you think about it, it makes sense. If you understand what's happening under the hood, if you just move your files in the Finder, Capture One doesn't know what happened with them. But if you move them from within Capture One, let's just say I want this folder just right into this. Yeah, then you can just move the folder here and that's moved. And then Capture One still knows where it is and there is no offline files whatsoever. It just knows what happened. So that's how you would move the folders from within a catalog, right? So we're approaching the end of the session. It's great that there are so many questions, and just a very important piece of information left, which is how to back up. So the backing up process is going to be different whether you're using sessions or catalogs. So as I said with the sessions, I'm just going to show you how it looks like. So for example, here, this is a session that is contained within this catalog. So it means that also the original Just kind of trying to make it bigger. Okay. So also the original files are stored here in this capture folder. And this capture folder is just synchronized with Capture One, but the files are not in the user collection. They are not in Capture One, they are just here. And Capture One just said, okay, this is where the files are. That's nice. I know where they are. And when I need to process them, I will just come here and grab the information I need. So it's important to understand how to do this backup properly. So with sessions, it's very easy. Also, one of the reasons why I prefer sessions is because just like, okay, this folder is self-contained. You just literally move this to anywhere else and everything that, I don't know where I moved it. So Command Z for the win. So I can just literally move this folder or copy this folder anywhere. And I will always be able to access my photos and everything that happened in between, like adjustments, metadata, whatever, that's backed up. So how do we do it with the catalog? Then if you remember in the beginning, you have to be mindful of backing up both the raw files and the catalog. So backing up the catalog, it's fairly easy. There is a very handy option actually within the interface that I recommend you set up. So I'm going to show you how. So here on Capture One 22, you just go here and you have the preferences. So you go to the preferences, and here on the first tab on general, there is a very handy option called catalog backup, which will remind you automatically when you want to back up this catalog. So you have different options. You can tell Capture One to remind you every time you close the catalog, which is kind of overwhelming for me, once a day, once a week, once a month, or never. I did once a week here because I don't really work with these catalogs anymore, but yeah, whatever works for you. Now, where that is going to be backed up, that you have to set up. So the location by default is the application support folder, which is kind of hidden away. So you might want to change that. In this case, my backup will be on archive A. And you see that I have like this archive A, B, and C thing. I'm going to tell you what's the whole deal with this archive A, B, and C. So Capture One will back up my catalog every time I close it once a week to archive A. That's going to back up everything that lives in the catalog. So the virtual organization, the metadata, the adjustments, but it will not back up the raw files because remember, the raw files are stored somewhere else. So having done that, I'm just going to close this catalog and I just did backup before, but let's just move on to this one again. So you can see what actually will happen. I'm just going to open it and close it. So you see the point. So I opened it, I'm going to close it. And this is the thing that will show me. So the catalog has not been backed up since forever, basically. So this is what's going to happen. You want to back it up now, and then you can just do the backup every time you close it, because as it's only backing up metadata, it's very fast. So you just click on backup, and this should be taking a couple of seconds, and then you're good to go. Yeah, that was done. That was very fast, as you can see, and you can just click OK, right? And then you go out of Capture One. Now, how do you back up the raw files? So this is a session, but let's just say that this is where the raw files are. You will need to manually copy these files from your hard drive where you are working to another hard drive. So there is many different ways to do it. The thing I'm doing here is like, I'm never working locally. So I'm never working in the local hard drive because I'm kind of paranoid that my computer will eventually catch on fire and I will lose everything. So what I'm doing is that I'm working everything all the time on external hard drives. So this is my main working hard drive, archive A. This is like my Bible for files. So everything is here. All my work is in archive A. What if archive A catches on fire then? Then that's why you need a backup. So in this case, I actually did a double backup, and I have archive B and archive C, which are mirror drives. So that means that archive B is identical to archive A, and archive C is also identical to archive A. It's just exact copies. So you can do that manually with your Windows Explorer or Finder, or a handy tip I wanted to give you is to use software for that purpose. There is different softwares that allow you to do this backing up task, which is boring but super necessary. There is things like ChronoSync. Personally, I'm using this piece of software I have here. It's called Carbon Copy Cloner. It's always running in the background. So I'm just going to open it. The interface is super simple, and you just program the backup task. So you see that I have only two tasks. So archive A archive A to archive B and archive A to archive C. The reason I did it like that is because like if the archive B copy is corrupt for some reason, I'm just backing it up from the original. So this task is very easy to set up. I just set it to run weekly on Sunday every week. So worst case scenario, archive A catches on fire. On Saturday evening, I just lost 1 week of work, or I can just run it manually whenever I want to. If I did a lot of work, I can just choose to do that manually and click on clone, and it will just start cloning it right away. What if archive A and archive B catch on fire in the same time? I still have archive C, which is again an exact same copy. This gives me so much peace of mind. I can't even stress it enough. I had such a scare. I thought I lost everything during lockdown, and my copy hard drive was somewhere else that I couldn't go because I was literally locked up at home for 2 months. So that was a pain. I was able to recover the files, but it gave me the scare. And that's where I decided to do this kind of thing. And I bought the license for Carbon Copy Cloner, and I set this whole thing up. And I'm so happy I did that. It's so peaceful now. You can't even imagine. So this software, any software, do it manually, but do your backups, right? And this is basically everything I wanted to cover. Only this, right? It was nothing at all. So let's just move on to questions and answers, actually.
Thank you so much for that. One question I had on that end, you talked about backups towards the end, which I always get super concerned about. And I've fallen victim to losing a lot of, we won't talk about it, but
That's sorry.
Yeah. When you're backing up, do you recommend backing up every single time that you're going to exit the software? And is it the kind of thing where every time you save the catalog or the folder that it creates a new kind of document, or does it just rewrite over the previous one with the new data?
No, it does rewrite everything with the new data. So, I mean, I wouldn't back up unless I did something significant. So like, for example, if I just came here and changed 2 photos or added some couple of green text, I wouldn't do it to backup. But you can just choose to do it manually every time you feel that you need to back it up. Like sometimes you're just not very productive and you don't have anything to back up really. So for example, when I'm using this software, I just set it to once a week because I feel that's enough for me. I also don't really shoot commercially, so no one's going to be blaming me if I lost some files typically. And if I did do some work, I can always just come here and just start cloning at any time.
Okay, awesome. Well, I do want to thank Maria again for always being here and supporting us. I also want to thank Capture One for sponsoring the event. But that's it. That's all the time we have for now. Thanks to everybody for tuning in. This has been another edition of the B&H Virtual Event Space. Catch you next time.